As much as people want James Franklin gone, Penn State might be stuck with him. And it's because of that $56 million buyout.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into another live edition of Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily source for all things Penn State sports. My name is Zach Seyko, and I'm your host of the show. I promised earlier, for anybody that's returning or anybody that had heard about it in the initial postgame reaction, that we were going to have a second follow-up postgame show because this is a big deal. Losing to UCLA warrants that, okay? But this is going to be a little more informal. Looking for your comments, looking for your questions. This show can go in so many different directions. If you want to talk the fallout of firing James Franklin now versus later, who would be ideal coaching candidates, why Penn State is stuck with James Franklin. I mean, James Franklin holds all the cards in this conversation. So this show is what we all make it here. So the more comments that I get, hey, we'll keep going. And it's thought-provoking comments. Keep it cordial, keep it clean, and I'll get your comments here in the live show. If you make a super chat, your comment will be vaulted to the top, just so everybody knows. So let's begin here before I do dive back into the live chat. I appreciate everybody's support on the show. Let's start with the fact that Penn State, for the most part, everybody agreed that Penn State and James Franklin were never going to part ways, okay? He loses the big game. It's easier to say that. It's easier to say after you lose to Oregon or Ohio State or Michigan or Notre Dame, this goes on and on, right? That, well, Penn State and James Franklin, they'll never part from one another because why should you? He's winning enough, he's successful enough, but now that changed, that completely changed by losing to UCLA, okay? I can make only so many justifications, so many reasons. Most people who followed the show, who follow me as a podcast host, know that I have been pretty supportive of James Franklin and what they've done and understood the uphill battle that it is. But now, after I say all of the reasons to justify a successful season for Penn State, you lose. Okay, so what else do you need? Do you need a better defensive coordinator? Do you need a better offensive coordinator? I mean, the answer is technically yes to all of these, but that was the whole point, is that you got your OC, you got your DC, you retained your roster. What more do you want? What more do you need to succeed? To even match what you've done in the past? Because it's one thing, okay, you match your results, I get it, but now you're losing games that you shouldn't. I mean, this is a new low. This is a completely new low for the James Franklin tenure at Penn State, because it was always, we can't reach this point because we don't have ABC. Well, you got ABC. So now I don't know what else there is left at this point in time. Could you use more NIL money? Sure, but you got the 5-star quarterback. I know that Drew Allar didn't pan out, but whose fault is that? Whose fault is that at the end of the day? You got your OC. Andy Kotelnicki was your top choice. Whose fault is that? That Andy Kotelnicki is not panning out in year 2. Jim Knowles, your top choice as defensive coordinator for a long time, not just because he became available this offseason. That was your guy for 5-6 years, something along those lines. You got him. So firing James Franklin is not just easy as, yes, let's do it tomorrow. It's not going to happen. It's going to happen at the end of the season. If it happens. I don't even know if Penn State's going to make that move, because Jimbo Fisher, I know Texas A&M and Jimbo Fisher had the buyout. I had to look it up. It was $76 million. But is Penn State really ready to agree to a $56 million buyout? So if James Franklin wants to stay, James Franklin's staying. And I'm glad that other people are pointing it out. It goes back to this isn't Pat Kraft's fault. This goes back to Sandy Barbour. because Penn State at the time basically allowed James Franklin to get all of the leverage. And now Pat Kraft and Penn State are dealing with the ramifications of it, because I guess no one ever saw James Franklin teams reeling like this at any point in time. So they're going to have to negotiate. And what if James Franklin says, I don't want to negotiate? This is my team and this is my program and I can turn it around. Or you can pay me $56 million. Tough. If that happens, I mean, what does Penn State do at that point in time? So the way to do it is through negotiation. And Pat Kraft, I mean, he's the top guy. As the athletic director, you got to have those hard conversations. You got to have, you got to be able to find a way to figure it out. But they are in such a tough spot where James Franklin holds all the cards. If they were to get into that negotiation, you're in the middle of, like I said, a stadium rebuild. You make the investments that you do. I think, I mean, at the end of the day, Penn State will be fine, but it's not something that's just as easy. Like, yeah, let's do it. You know, why not? Let's just do it. No, you're in a terrible spot to negotiate if you're Penn State trying to part ways with James Franklin. Or again, I don't know if Penn State, even with the leverage against the buyout, is Pat Kraft and Penn State willing to part ways with James Franklin, or if we just give him one more try? I think this is it, because again, I've run out of reasons to say, yeah, James Franklin can do it with this. Just give him more NIL money. That's not going to solve the issues here. It's not going to solve the issues. Some people might say it would, but you are where you are at this point in time. So it's not going to be simple. It's going to happen at the end of the season. Could Penn State, like I've already seen people try to convince me, because the season's over in my mind. I don't see Penn State finishing, because, well, they could go 10-2 and they beat Ohio State and Indiana. In theory, do they get back into the playoffs with that resume? I guess, probably. But that's under the assumption that they go to Columbus, that they beat Indiana at home, they beat Iowa, they beat Nebraska. I don't know if Penn State's better than any of those teams at this point in time. Oh, well, they went to double overtime with Oregon. They were still down 17-3. Like, for 3.5 quarters, it was all Oregon. Ohio State just blew out Minnesota. I don't know if Penn State is better than all of those teams for whatever reason. If it's because Tyler Warren and Abdul Carter really made that much of a difference last season, because Penn State's offense went from top 15 in the nation to, I have the statistics will update because I look at the comparative statistics for team stats across that'll probably update tomorrow as all the results come in, but they were outside of the top 50. That much regression. Players aren't developing properly. This team clearly does not, they just don't want to be there for whatever reason. They're not having fun, right? I don't care if they have fun at this point in time. They're not having fun, right? So where Penn State goes from here is they're not going to fire him in the middle of the season, because they have to negotiate. They have to go into the off season. And James Franklin, honestly, if he lands another job, might very well take a buyout negotiation and find another job. But if you're James Franklin, why would you want to leave Penn State, honestly? You have a contract that protects you from these kinds of games. He's protected because if it wasn't for that $56 million buyout, he'd be fired. If it was 15 to 20 million, I think Pat Kraft would have gave him the pink slip. And the decision would have been made either like right now, Saturday night, as we're talking about this, or going into Sunday. A decision would be made that quickly, but you really have to think about it. And as time goes on, It's not just the same feelings that we all have today, regardless. I mean, some people are going to, but these feelings specifically are still going to change. People might still come to the same conclusion, but how you get to that conclusion may change. Some people might relax on it. It's like, well, yeah, Penn State. So say, because you will get people, say you go 9-3 and actually beat Ohio State. Let's just say for a hypothetical. Then you're going to convince a portion of the crowd, and that for James Franklin, he's going to use that and say, well, I beat Ohio State, so clearly there's something here, right? And look at this 2027 recruiting class. If I just had more. So James Franklin is almost fireproof. It's going to take a negotiation, and then he has the leverage. If he doesn't find a better job or a job that's suitable to him, then he doesn't go anywhere. Okay? So I know I encourage comments in the live chat. This is truly a Q&A, but I wanted to get more thoughts out there of why this is so complicated. That's just it. 56 million. I had it wrong the first time. I said 48 million. It's 56. So it's a lot more difficult there, especially with all the other loans that you were taking. Because, yeah, the athletic department could just borrow the money, pay the buyout, and be done with it. But all of your loans are tied up in a $700 million stadium project. I want to hear from all of you. Thank you for joining the live show here, the part 2 live show, as we are going to continue with your thoughts from the live chat coming up next here on this live edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. And this episode is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIH top safety plus Pick Plus awards than anyone else. From footwork to breath work, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings the same intention to how we craft every model. You can feel Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to available Nappa leather upholstery. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. And like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. That's Mazda. Mazda, move and be moved. Today's episode is also brought to you by Peloton. Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton Cross Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. It's their most advanced equipment yet, designed to give you real-time guidance and endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or cross-training with your favorite instructors. This is training reimagined. Peloton is built for breakthroughs, with tools that help you plan and stay motivated and reach peak performance. You will love how the Peloton IQ system offers real-time strength coaching. It actually tracks your reps, suggests the right weights, corrects your form, making every rep safer and smarter. The swivel screen is a game changer. You can go from running on the Tread Plus to strength training without missing a beat. And the personalized class recommendations keep you engaged, and you get workouts tailored to your vibe and energy level each week. So let yourself run, lift, flex, and push forward. Explore the new Peloton Cross Training Tread Plus today at onepeloton.com. That is onepeloton.com. All right, like I said, thank you for joining a part 2 live show. A little more informal, relaxed here. Don't have as much coordinated segments, but we will take periodic breaks. Remember, if you want your comments pushed to the top, if you contribute a super chat, I appreciate the donation and the support on the show. And remember, please keep it respectable so that we can have a conversation. Let's actually have a conversation here, right? Probably wishful thinking. This comes from Penn State, man. So thank you for the contribution and the support and your comment. Probably wishful thinking. What about Day, Smart, or Lanning? Oh, so we're going after, okay, so we're not taking the long shot breakout candidate, right? Somebody that has potential. We are going for a home run, somebody who's shown stability at another program by naming Ryan Day, Kirby Smart, or Dan Lanning. Would they consider a lateral job for them if we offered more than they get paid? Truth be told here, this is not gonna sit well with Penn State fans. Some, maybe all, or some people would be like, you know what, I kind of agree with that. Oregon, Georgia, and you named Ohio State as well. All 3 of those jobs are better than Penn State. Not by a lot, but they're better. Dan Lanning has Phil Knight to bankroll as much as possible for NIL. Oregon has one of the best NIL setups in college football. Ohio State has one of the best NIL setups in college football. And Georgia has one of the best NIL setups in college football. They have some of the best facilities. Location, maybe not necessarily Eugene, Oregon is significantly better than State College, but Columbus is way more attractive to college athletes than State College. Same thing with Athens, Georgia. Eugene, Oregon, people say, well, Oregon's not that much better than Penn. Okay, I get that. I can understand that. Oregon always has to go outside of the state of Oregon. Part of that has to do with the talent that is there, high school talent at Oregon, but all of those jobs are higher than Penn State. So Ryan Day would not take a job at Penn State even for a better salary because he has more opportunities to succeed at Ohio State. Same thing with Kirby Smart. Same thing with Dan Lanning. You are taking a massive risk. You're already settled. You already have the success. That's why it's difficult to poach one of those head coaches because they're established. They've already built relations. Why would you scrap all of that? Why would you scrap all of that success to take a chance that Penn State's going to give you what you need? You're already as close as you are to a national title run, things like that. So I understand what you're thinking. If Penn State pays them more money, but is Penn State's setup going to be better? What amount of money are we talking about? Are we talking about doubling a salary, which is probably that's not worth it. Paying a Dan Lanning $20 million. I don't know who the highest paid coach is at the moment. I think it's in the neighborhood of 11, 12 million. And if that's the case, so you pay one person $25 million, that's not going to fly. That's not going to happen. But somebody, yes, in theory would take that job. But to say, hey, we'll give you $1 million of a raise instead of, so let's say Ryan Day's making $12 million. Penn State says, well, we'll give you $13 million a year. Is it really worth it to upend what you have established at your very successful institution? Probably not. Ian, thank you so much for the comment and the super chat and the donation. It's concerning that Franklin's sample size of developing quarterbacks hasn't been ideal. Think a new coach is best for the program since we've had QBs full. Franklin bears responsibility, of course, for quarterback development because A, if you're not doing the job, then B, you need to delegate. Joe Moorhead was a fantastic quarterbacks coach. He was the OC/quarterbacks coach. And after him, there hasn't been anything. Because I do believe your OC should also be the quarterbacks coach. I find it interesting that I know that Andy Kotelnicki works with Drew Allar, but he's not a QB coach. His job is to coordinate the offense, and Danny O'Brien's the QB coach. I don't like that. I don't like that at all, actually. Joe Moorhead was the best setup. He was the OC, he was the QB's coach, and he got the most out of, Trace McSorley. Geez, I almost said, I don't know what name I was going with. I blanked there. Trace McSorley. But then they went with, so Mike Yurcich wasn't good, didn't succeed, but he was that OC QB's coach setup. Kirk Shiraka came in, COVID season, bad timing. I think Kirk Shiraka is actually a really good offensive coordinator, but that was bad timing. I don't know what that was, but I like the Kirk Shiraka hire at the time. I think he's doing pretty well at Rutgers. I'm not saying go and get him. This can all be fixed if we go get Kirk Shiraka. If Penn State goes and gets Kirk Shiraka, not what I'm saying. But at the time, that was a good hire. Unfortunately, you can't teach an offense over Zoom, and I think everybody just kind of got burned out at that point because of the COVID season. So then James Franklin, since he is a former quarterback, he is a former, it's so intriguing to me that a guy with an offensive background, played quarterback, coached wide receivers in the NFL. And offense, quarterback, and wide receivers are probably the three most frustrating position groups with Penn State. The offense collectively, quarterback, and wide receiver. And James Franklin has his background in all. It's not like he's a defensive-minded coach and he's a defensive guy and played DB or played linebacker or something like that. Defense hasn't been the issue for Penn State. It's been offense since Trace McSorley and Saquon Barkley went off to the NFL. I mean, some of those offenses were still capable. Ricky Ronnie was a good offensive coordinator, right? So that's where did the shift happen? Where did the shift for Penn State to take such a step backwards offensively? Because this wasn't an issue. It was Saquon Barkley and Trace McSorley, and the 2016 and 2017 teams could score points at will. In 2018, honestly, 2019, those Sean Clifford offenses weren't bad. They were actually really good. They were some of the better ones in the country at the time. 2020 COVID season, I really don't put that, I forget about that season. That honestly, I don't think about that one. I don't let that define anybody. Actually, I think that's just a mulligan. It's an asterisk. 2021 was what it was. You can bear through it. That was not a roster that was built, and the transfer portal, NIL, all of that stuff wasn't an issue, or it wasn't a thing. It wasn't really a thing yet. But then 2022, they turn it around. 2023, and now you're kind of back in that area where you're just not elite. You're good, you're great, but you're not elite. Okay, and that's how we got here, because, well, Penn State shouldn't fire James Franklin because they're winning all the games that they should, and now they didn't. Penn State man, again, thank you for the contribution and the super chat. I think Ohio State's talent made Knowles look good. That's what a lot of Ohio State people will say. And Jim Knowles did well the first game, did well the second game, did well the third game against, granted, the opponents. Against Oregon, the defense showed up. How do you show up against Oregon? How do you play so well against Oregon? And then the guy who's calling plays for UCLA, to add insult to injury, found out he was calling plays this week, had 5 days notice, did not know how to communicate with Nico Iamaleava in the headset, did not know how to communicate with the helmet technology. And then, again, and they put the game plan together. So he finds out he's calling plays in 5 days. They practice the game plan for 2 days, and they score 42 points against the most expensive college defensive coordinator in all of college football. Losing Tony Rojas is a big deal. Jim Knowles' defense can be good, can be really effective, but yes, you do need the players to be able to run it. You need a Tony Rojas and Amari Campbell on the field at all times. If Tony Rojas was available today, it might be an excuse, however you want to frame it, but I truly believe that Tony Rojas, instead of Dom DeLuca or anybody else, played that game, he'd be able to chase down Nico Iamaleava when he's running the football, because that's how Penn State got beat. Penn State got beat from 150 yards, and then you account for some of the sack totals that are taken out of the game, taken off of the stats. Iamaleava ran for 150 yards, I think. That's an estimate. It's somewhere in the neighborhood of 140 to 150. That's unacceptable. But if Tony Rojas is out there spying the quarterback, Penn State probably wins that game. Because they lost because they just couldn't figure out how to stop Iamaleava from running. They had no answer because they literally had no answer. There was nobody to spy him. Sure, Mari Campbell's at the mic. You don't have a weak side linebacker that can cover Iamaleava. That was the reason that UCLA's offense was so effective. But if Jim Knowles is that great of a defensive coordinator, then shouldn't he be able to scheme around it? In theory, yes. I side with that fact. But if Penn State, I'm still saying if Penn State has, which is true, if Penn State has Tony Rojas, they win against UCLA. However, Jim Knowles, as Penn State man has pointed out, if Jim Knowles is so great, but implying it, right? That Ohio State's defense was that's, you ask an Ohio State fan, Jim Knowles was carried by the talent. Jim Knowles did not carry the talent, as we would say. So, again, if you want your comments, we're going to continue with the live chat, go back and forth, have conversations about this. Do you have questions about James Franklin? Do you have questions about the players? Do you have questions about the recruiting? We'll discuss all of it here on this live show, but we're going to continue with the live chat. You want your comments pushed to the top, contribute in the super chats, but we have more on the way here on this live edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. And today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Monarch Money is an incredible finance tool that helps you in so many different ways to manage your finances. Most people can't name all of their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all of your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending. Finally, feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. You can maximize your investments, increase your savings rate, easily review finances with a partner or a financial advisor, keep a clear view of your financial health week to week and long term. So don't let this financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for, get this, half off your first year. That is right, half off your first year. That is monarchmoney.com. That is monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONCollege for 50% off your first year. Today's episode is also brought to you by Game Time. You got to download the Game Time app because buying tickets to your favorite events should not be stressful. We know that college football is here, the tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, and there's just nothing like it. But let's be real. Actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. You can pull up Game Time in just a couple of taps. You'll see amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite college football games for as low as $25. And if you've never been to a venue before, Game Time has a cool feature where you get to see your point of view ahead of time. So if you've never been to a stadium, if you've never been to a ballpark, because they have tickets for all kinds of events, not just football games, but many more, you can see your point of view ahead of time so you have that guarantee. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that is promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. And again, thank you so much for joining the live show. This is the late live show, right? We had the initial post-game reaction, and now we're here. But like I said, a little more casual. Don't have the devoted content here. This is a fan comment driven show. So that's a typo because fired the head coach. I know what you're saying. Fire the head coach. At this point, it seems like the only logical option. Does Penn State circle the wagons, go 10-2, beat Ohio State? It's still at one point, even if Penn State salvages the season, I don't know, because losing to UCLA is inexcusable. If this is USC, if this is Washington, right? It's a team that you're not better than, because I understand losing Tony Rojas, not ideal. Traveling across the country after you lose to Oregon, not ideal. Trying to keep a positive mental headspace when you lose another big game, not ideal. I can reason with that. Those are the reasons that Penn State lost the game. They are. But at the same time, they're not good enough excuses when it's UCLA. I can reason with that. I can understand it if it's anybody else. But it's not. It was the worst team in FBS football. They put a game plan together in 48 hours. I don't know who their head coach is. I can't name their head coach at the moment. Their OC is 33 years old, played football at UCLA, and they promoted him 5 days ago, and then he put together a game plan in 48 hours and outcoached your $3.2 million defensive coordinator. I'm out of excuses for it. I feel for Penn State. I still can't believe this is real life. Yeah, it doesn't feel real at the moment. Honestly, I guess it's somewhat settled in now because I never thought Penn State would reach this new low. I just thought it would be this continuous cycle. When they lost to Oregon, I'm like, okay, it's just going to be this continuous cycle of we don't beat anybody that is in tier 1, because I group it as The teams, because Penn State wins some of those, highly contested games, right? They beat SMU. Okay, they don't just lose to every team that is good or every game that is a big game. I feel like a playoff game is a big game, but it's the teams that are in tier 1. It's the elite teams. So if they're elite, you're not beating them. Michigan at the time, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Oregon, you're not beating those teams. They're elite, you're not. You're great, they're elite. No chance. And so it's just going to be this perpetual cycle of Penn State literally goes 10-2. They're stuck. And I've talked about that. I've addressed it before. I said, is Penn State stuck in 10-2? Maybe, but if they do this, they won't be. Well, they did all of that. And no, they're worse. They're worse. So it is real life. Somehow Penn State got more and now they're doing more with less. Yes, it was a crazy loss. Very crazy. So silly. It was so silly of them to lose that game. So silly. $56 million. Yes. James Franklin has all the leverage here in any sort of negotiation. What's crazy is that game against Ohio State will still be a battle. We're talking about the game in the middle of November, or it's at the beginning of November, November 1st. Because I'm not really thinking about it. I think the season's a lost cause. So will Penn State compete with Ohio State? I can't buy into that. I can't. I don't know how Penn State, because if Penn State cracks under this kind of pressure, what's going to be, so say they win, they beat Northwestern, they beat Iowa, let's assume they get the bye week, because the bye week doesn't matter, apparently. You have the bye week going into Oregon, doesn't matter. You go into Ohio State, oh, this is an opportunity to save our season. They crack under the pressure. That is all the pressure there. Oh, you still have a chance to save your season. That doesn't matter. That's not motivating to them, clearly, because it's Oregon. It's the whiteout. You should have all the motivation in the world. People are saying that you can't win the big game. It doesn't matter. So yeah, they could have motivation to save their season against Ohio State, save their season against Indiana. I don't buy into that. I don't know what makes them tick psychologically. I try to understand it. I try to reason with it, but I can't. So I don't see them being motivated for Ohio State, motivated for Indiana. I think they'll be under more pressure, and they don't handle pressure. That's the thing. They just don't handle the pressure. When there's pressure on them in a high stakes game, they don't handle it. Bottom line, they don't. Hey, go Irish. Take your jabs. Take them. I'll roll with the punches here. Absolutely. Ohio State, Michigan, Notre Dame, Oregon. It's feel free to pile on. How did Jim Knowles not have a game plan for this team? So for the people that are genuinely wondering, for the people that say that Jim Knowles, didn't, want to say it as a joke, because it didn't seem like he had a game plan. That is why it is truly, he didn't have a game plan, because you have no tape, you have no film. Again, another excuse, but that's what I pointed out in my pregame show. I didn't think it would be a reason to lose the game. I thought it would be a reason to struggle with them early on, but you would make your second half adjustments, and no second half adjustments were made. So it was because you didn't know what they were going to run on offense. You didn't know. But I think as a podcast host, if I'm able to read some articles, come to the conclusion, listen to the guys on the UCLA side of things and say, here's what we're expecting from Nico Iamaleava and this Jerry Neuheisel offense. That's the guy. That's the offensive coordinator. And Neuheisel, he's supposed to be a QB guru. He's going to scheme up a plan, because Iamaleava was running a system that didn't benefit him and didn't benefit the offensive line. So they needed to go more quick game, RPO, QB option to offset how bad this offensive line was. And they did that to a T. So if I know that's going to happen, why doesn't Jim Knowles know that's going to happen? Why doesn't Penn State's defense prepare for that? I saw no press coverage. They're throwing screens. They're going quick. Why aren't the linebackers pressing the line of scrimmage? Why isn't A.J. Harris, Elliott Washington, Davian Collins pressed up against the wide receivers and say, beat us in one-on-one coverage? Audible out of your quick game, audible out of your RPO, and try to throw it deep. Were you really scared of Iamaleava throwing a pass over the top? You already gave up 42 points. So this back off defense, not pressing the line of scrimmage, I don't understand it. And as a podcast host, if I go back and watch my preview episode because I say, hey, Iamaleava is really good when you ask him to run. You need to be conscious of it. But I didn't think that was going to be the reason that they lose. So if you're asking why, if you genuinely want to know why Knowles had no game plan, it's because there was really nothing to game plan for. It was a brand new offense that was made in 48 hours, but that should hurt UCLA, not Penn State. Especially with the caliber of, they should have just been able to out-talent them. And they didn't. They didn't. I bet they let him finish the season. They're not going to negotiate a buyout now. James Franklin decides because James Franklin can't help himself in the middle of the season. He can't go job hunt. He can't find a new job right now, right? If James Franklin's intention is to negotiate a buyout, leave Penn State and say, you know what? I'll come to a middle ground. I'm going to go find this job. You're my agent and Pat Kraft can discuss the terms of a negotiated, mediated buyout. And I'll move on and save my peace because that's what I'm kind of anticipating here. But it's not going to happen tomorrow. It's not going to happen next week. It's not going to happen a few weeks later. If Penn State truly wants to part ways and James Franklin wants to say, you know what, I need a fresh start, he's got to be able to find a job because he has all the leverage. So he can say, if I don't find a job that's suitable, why would he leave Penn State? Just for the sake of it. Because then Penn State has to pay all $56 million of that buyout. And are they prepared to do that when all of their money is tied up in a stadium renovation? Gosh, what wonderful timing, right? For Penn State. So I see we have another super chat here. Appreciate the super chat. Ohio State gives up, Penn State man again. Ohio State gives up 5 points per game. I don't see how we score exactly. I don't see, because Penn State's issues are mainly offensively. I don't understand. But the defense is going to take a step back now moving forward. There's no substitute for Tony Rojas. You don't fix that. You can scheme some things, but it means that the defense is going to have to look somewhat different. You have to scheme up somewhat of a different defense because now you don't have the luxury of Tony Rojas and Amari Campbell flying sideline to sideline. If you can cook up that defense, if you're Jim Knowles, so be it. But I don't trust Penn State. I trust Penn State's offense to make slight improvements. They will slightly get better, but I think the offense is just what it is. It is what it is. None of these wide receivers are takeover players. Trevor Pena is good. I believe Kyron Hudson, Trevor Pena, and Devontae Ross are good. But are they NFL good? Are any of them getting drafted in the first or second round? No, they don't have that kind of caliber player in the passing game. They had that with Tyler Warren. So now I guess it's making a little more sense why Penn State had the success it did with Tyler Warren, because he was a first-round NFL pick. I would not bet any money that Trevor Pena is going to be drafted in day one or day two. Same thing with Kyron Hudson. Same thing with Devontae Ross. That's not a hot take. That's a reasonable take. So let's see here. UCLA QB transfer, Miami quarterback transfer, Mizzou quarterback, Prabula transfer, Ohio State QB last year transfer, Will Howard. So what was Allar really worth paying him for Louis Vuitton loafers? Yeah, Drew Allar comes into question. He never developed. He never panned out. Here are some more condensed thoughts on Drew Allar, because I could devote a whole episode to Drew Allar and what went wrong and everything else. So Mike Yurcich was the one that recruited him. He's the one that identified Drew Allar as a talent. Like I said, there's so many layers to Allar's situation now that we are getting to the tail end of this. Did Penn State fumble? Did the Penn State mess up Drew Allar's development? Well, absolutely, because Allar does have the raw talent, but he never took that next step forward. So it's somebody's fault. It's Penn State. It's a collective combination of Mike Yurcich, James Franklin, and now Andy Kotelnicki. It's also Penn State hasn't had a good quarterbacks coach since Joe Moorhead and Ricky Ronnie. I'll give Ricky Ronnie his due. Either of those guys, I think, would have been able to unlock Drew Allar in some sort of capacity. Penn State punted at quarterbacks coach. Why? I don't know. They punted at wide receivers coach. They invested because do you notice how the position coaches, if you were to rank all of them, where are Penn State's best positions? Defensive back. Well, Terry Smith and Anthony Poindexter are some of the best in the country. They get paid very well. Okay. Offensive line. Well, offensive line stinks this season, but Phil Troutwine was continuing. They're underwhelming. They're good some moments, they're bad other moments. They're not living up to expectations, okay? But Phil Troutwine, highly respectable coordinator at offensive line, he at least is taking this group in a better direction. Same thing with, running back. Jaywan Sider was a great hire, and he's one of the better running backs coach and recruiters in the entire country. So running back was where it was for a reason. Ty Howell does a phenomenal job with the tight ends. But if you look at, and I'm talking, it's not only about pay. Oh, the highest paid position coach means that it's translating to success. No, that's not what I'm trying to imply. What I am saying is that if you look at legacy, so Terry Smith, Anthony Poindexter, it's not like Penn State made a home run hire for quarterbacks coach. It's Danny O'Brien. Danny O'Brien has no legacy, no proof. He is supposedly a high ceiling. Hey, this guy's a future, quarterback whisperer, offensive coordinator, whatever have you. James Franklin thinks he has a bright future in college football. I'm not seeing it right now. I'm not seeing it. And then Marcus Hagan, same thing. It's a buy low, type of situation. Hey, let's invest in somebody that's still a rising star in the coaching ranks, and we'll make him into a superstar wide receivers coach. That didn't happen. And so you're seeing that where you have stability and guys that are proven in all of your other position groups. Linebacker right now, linebacker doesn't have any depth because it was Manny Diaz one day, it was Tom Allen the next, and now it's Dan Connor. It worked with Deion Barnes. I didn't mention Deion Barnes. So you want to talk about young and unproven. It worked with Deion Barnes, but it's not a one size fits all. It's not, hey, we did it here at defensive line, so therefore it'll work at the most important position in football. No. It'll work at wide receiver. No. So at defensive line, great. You found your underrated candidate who was flying under the radar, and you got him to work at defensive line. But everywhere else, you have an established guy that has a legacy in college football. See, we have another super chat. You just wanted this in here, so I appreciate the super chat. When will Penn State join the MAC? They're playing like a MAC team. FIU just got blown out by UConn. So I just don't think this Penn State team is that great at the end of the day. I don't know if they're going to beat Iowa in Kinnick Stadium, because the idea is that, if they can beat Ohio State, it's still a possibility. It is a 1% to 2% chance possibility. I just don't think that team is this good. Whether it's a coaching issue, whether it's a personnel issue, whether it's a depth issue, I think it's all of those things combined. I think James Franklin cracked under the pressure. Andy Kotelnicki doesn't have, last year's offense was better suited for Andy Kotelnicki than this year's offense. Andy Kotelnicki, let me go off on a tangent of Andy Kotelnicki, because was he a bad coordinator hire at the time? No. Is he a bad coordinator hire now? Yes, because Kotelnicki was brought in because he can run the 2 quarterback offense. His whole thing was, I can run the multiple system to maximize both Drew Allar and Bo Prabula. And for the most part, it worked last season. Not every time. But the intention was that, hey, Drew will go off to the NFL, and then Bo will slide in and take over and be that quarterback for Andy Kotelnicki. Well, that never happened. And now you don't have that 2 quarterback setup anymore to just add another wrinkle to the playbook. Whether you agree with it or not, Andy Kotelnicki knows how to run that 2 quarterback system because he did it at Kansas. That's why he was brought in, because you had that setup at the time. And then that all fell to the wayside. So Bo Prabula's off to Mizzou. All of those, all the dominoes fell because Drew was supposed to leave. Drew was supposed to go to the NFL. He was getting, I mean, he was getting first round. He was getting first round, at least interest. I don't know if it actually would have happened, but those conversations were real. Drew's still going to get drafted, whether you think he should or not. Drew's going to be drafted because an NFL franchise will look at him and say, we can fix him. We'll be the coaching staff that gets him to the next level that he needs to be at. So, I lost my place in the comments section. If you want your comments at the top, remember, super chat. Go after Jimbo Fisher. Yeah, let's finish one buyout and open up another. How can we honestly say he won't be fired when Texas A&M fired Fisher and now are in the top 10? Because Penn State's not in the same situation as Texas A&M. They're not doing a stadium renovation. How Texas A&M pulled the buyout together, I'm not exactly sure. Could, in theory, Penn State, again, negotiate in the middle of the season? Yes, but you want a prediction from me. I'm not saying that it's impossible. It's just unlikely. This is all going to happen after the season. Also, Jimbo Fisher is, I think, at the end of his career for the most part. Like, he can go into retirement. I don't think James Franklin's actually ready to retire at any point in time. Allar is overrated. Yes, Allar is overrated, unfortunately. So I got off on my tangent about Drew Allar. Drew was a program's, so he was not a true 5-star. Okay. There's a reason Ohio State didn't recruit him. Why didn't Ohio State recruit him? I find that weird. He's a 5-star quarterback. They should have at least offered him. They didn't offer him. And hindsight's 2020, but when you start to realize and read between the lines, okay, is Ohio State bad at recruiting, or do they get their first choice at recruits? They get their first choice at recruits. So they scouted Drew Allar. He was in Ohio, so of course they scouted him. But they looked and said, he's not even good enough to get an offer. That wasn't just disrespectful recruiting. That was Ohio State saying, we don't think he's going to be a starter here, so why waste our time? Okay, he's a 5-star. So it was Penn State, because Penn State always has to recruit this way, where they have to go and find the diamond in the rough, that gem of a recruit. It works out for Abdul Carter. Abdul Carter was a 3-star, 4-star. I think he was an 88 overall, according to, or he was a 90 overall, according to 24/7, which is just good enough to be a 4-star recruit. And he ends up becoming the third overall pick in the NFL draft. Well, it worked for Abdul Carter, so it should work for Nicholas Singleton. It should work for Drew Allar. It doesn't work out that way all the time. Look at Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley was a 91 overall, according to 24/7. For some people, it just clicks. It just clicks for them. And for Drew, it never did. I don't know if Ohio State had conversations with him, or if they had conversations with people who had scouted Drew, or whatever, what their ultimate decision was. But they never offered Drew until late. I think it was just a month or two before he actually committed to Penn State, where he signed on the dotted line. That's just the fact of the matter, that Drew was a poor man's 5-star recruit. Okay? That's what he was at the end of the day. He was a poor man's 5-star recruit, because he was a quarterback with all the potential, but it was your job to do all the heavy lifting and unlock it. He didn't come game day ready. And Penn State didn't do the work, didn't do the job correctly. Did Franklin really blame travel in his press conference? Yes, he did. And I can understand that. Cross-country trips are not easy. They are not easy. That's a 6-hour plane ride. I could reason with that against USC and Washington, or Oregon. They played Oregon at home. But say they had flown out and played USC again. They played Washington on the heels. And that's why I said in the halftime on the live show, when I reacted to the game in the middle of it, I said I had more confidence for Penn State to come back against USC when it was 20-6 last year than I do Penn State. Now, granted, the margin, it was 27-7 against UCLA, but it was their mentality. They were undefeated at the time. They weren't coming off of a demoralizing loss, all of that stuff. It was different this time. The setup was different. So those are truly reasons, but it's not good enough to sell me on when it's UCLA. Against Washington, yeah, travel's going to stink. Against UCLA, it doesn't matter. You should be able to out-talent them at that point. Worst running game in the country, one of the worst offensive lines in the country, and nothing. Let's see. Manny or Bill O'Brien would have the Nittany Lions spitting nails and playing tough. Is it possible that James Franklin has a handshake agreement with Singleton on split carries? What other football reason is there? So they're committed to the process of it, that these running backs, there's two parts to this. I say one, Penn State's just committed to the process that we run a backfield by committee. We will split carries no matter what, because Nicholas Singleton and K-Tron, I just don't think Singleton's responding to Stan Drayton's coaching. That's just it. The idea was that Stan Drayton was supposed to unlock their potential, that Ja'Juan Seider was somehow limiting them. That was the conversation in the offseason. I mean, I didn't like Ja'Juan Seider leaving for Notre Dame, but okay, you brought in Stan Drayton. Stan Drayton is proven. He's good. K-Tron Allen's responding, but Nick isn't. So they're just committed to the bit of, we work with a running back by committee where we split, we have a 1A and a 1B. We don't have a true workhorse running back. When in reality, just go with the hot hand. Play K-Tron Allen. And then when Nicholas Singleton finds his groove, then you play him a little more. But it is inexcusable on fourth and 2. Your running back is your best player on 4th and 2. You're going with a QB power jet sweep option keeper with your mobile quarterback, right? Your dual threat. It's different when it's Bo Prabula. When it's Drew Allar, okay. Why isn't K-Tron Allen in there when he's just your best player overall? He's just the guy that's working on 4th and 2. He's the power back. Run with the power back. I heard all of, hey, we have all these tight ends. We're going to run tight end at fullback. We can go I formation. We can go diamond, all of these things. Run diamond formation. Hindsight's 2020, I get it. But you can run a diamond formation with Khalil Dinkins and Andrew Rapplier as those two lead blockers. Run a counter with K-Tron Allen and just go hammer the 4th and 2. Just go hammer those 2 yards and get the first. Is it really that complicated? Sometimes you just have to run power football. So, yeah, and I think NIL's a part of it too. It's going to be a lot more difficult these days. You paid to retain Singleton and bring him back. Singleton could have gone, I know, Singleton could have gone off to the NFL. That's funny. Could have. He was graded as a top 10 running back in this past draft. He doesn't look it now. He's tanked his draft stock, but at the time, Mel Kiper had him and K-Tron Allen were 5th and 6th. Penn State paid money, NIL dollars, so I think it's difficult to bench people that you make a hefty NIL investment in. $3 million quarterback, go sit the bench. $1.5, $2 million running back, go sit the bench. I think NIL does complicate that a little bit. It's not the same. College football is different as we forever know it. The arrogance when he brought up he was recruiting during the week and we wouldn't have gotten better recruits. I loosely remember that quote. Hindsight's 2020 because maybe Penn State's too committed to the process, the whole 1-0 thing. Every game's the same. Again, it's all, hey, this result has happened, so now we look at it differently, we judge it differently. This is true. This is real. But Penn State doesn't deviate from the process. They treat every game the same. They treat every practice the same. They treat every regiment the same. They're regimented. James Franklin is regimented. We do the same. At Monday at 7 a.m. is exactly the same. Tuesday at 4 p.m. is exactly the same. Wednesday at 8 p.m. is exactly the same. Thursday at 11 a.m. on a travel day is exactly the same. It's all the same. So, hindsight's 2020. At what point do you say, we need to win this game against Oregon? Instead of recruiting, why don't we devote another day to game planning? Again, hindsight's 2020. You lost that game. If you win, nobody's questioning it. And again, they lost in double overtime. So it's not, if they had gotten blown out, it's like, man, this is really bad. You messed up here. So I don't know if it's arrogance. Penn State's just, James Franklin's loyal to a fault. He really is. Whether that's to players, whether that's to the process, that's the want-to-know mentality. At some point, you just have to scrap things. Well, it's not hurting us. It's not broken. But to somebody else, it is. It might not be to James Franklin. Oh, we go 10-2. We don't win these games. We're 4-21. You're loyal to a fault to the process. The process only gets you to 10-2. Change the process if you want to be better than that. So when you look at it, you say all of that, then maybe James Franklin and Penn State just don't want to be better than 10-2. They're fine with 10-2. And I mean Penn State, the football program, and James Franklin mainly. But Penn State is content with 10-2 because they don't try to change anything in the process. You have the sample size. It only gets you so far. Again, this is on the heels of embarrass one of the worst losses in college football. If they beat UCLA, I don't know if we're questioning all of this. Sure, we might question a buyout or a Franklin because I was trying to think about how's the show when they were close. They were within 7, right? There were 4 minutes left. And it seemed like, hey, Penn State's going to be able to do this. They're going to be come back. So I'm starting to figure out my show. What am I going to say when Penn State wins? What am I going to say when Penn State loses? If they won, I don't know if we get this deep. I don't know if we get this much into the conversation where we're questioning everything and we're pointing out every problem or theoretical problem. But yeah, it's a problem. It's an issue. Thank you for the super chats. C-Dubs, what is the board behind you? That right there. That is a team ticker sign. Awesome. Awesome sign. It's cooler when Penn State's winning and doesn't, because we're going to get to 0-2 in conference here pretty soon on the board, if I can point correctly. Oh, Penn State's not there. They don't even make the board there in the Big Ten standings. Oh, great. No, it'll update. But that's what's cool about it. It's a sign that'll update. It's called Team Ticker. Ticker. All right. Thank you for the super chat. Josh says, why can't people see Pribula and Levis aren't any better? They just have coaches that take the handcuffs off and let them play. QBs won't succeed here. Trace McSorley did. Sean Clifford was actually better at coaching. Ricky Ronnie was a good QB's coach. That was the difference. I wonder, it's all, well, hindsight's 2020. What if Kirk Shiraka worked out? So let me leave the question up the comment up on the board for everybody to read it here. I don't think Will Levis was any better than Sean Clifford at the end of the day. Oh, well, he got drafted higher, okay? But when I look at Kentucky versus Penn State, did Kentucky do anything different? Did Kentucky make a playoff run or an SEC title run? No. They didn't do any better than Penn State did, than Sean Clifford did in his career. And if Will Levis was so great, he would have beaten out Sean Clifford in a quarterback competition. Or is James Franklin loyal to a fault? Sean Clifford's his guy. So I would like to err on the side of it because these people get paid millions that they're not going to intentionally mess up a starting lineup, that they go with their best option. That's because when your job is on the line, you can't mess it up. You get paid tens of millions of dollars a year. If you stick with Will Levis and he doesn't pan out because in practice you say, well, we think he can be better. You prove it day to day in practice. And I don't think that's said enough because it's, well, why wasn't Bo Pribula kept over Drew? Why wasn't, some people argue Tommy Stevens? Oh, Tommy Stevens would have been better than Trace McSorley if they had just kept Stevens. You have to win on a daily basis in practice. Will Levis did not do enough in practice to beat out Sean Clifford. Bo Pribula, for whatever reason, did not do enough in practice to beat out Drew Allar in a quarterback competition. Drew was doing something more, whether it was reading defenses or maybe Pribula with a nice offseason was able to get to his full potential as a passer, because I think Pribula was a little questionable as a passer. You notice when they called a lot of those run plays, they didn't really pass it with him. When they called the Bo Pribula specialty packages, oh, this is great because Pribula can run the football, he can hand it off, or he's good enough to pass. He never passed it up until that Wisconsin game. So when he was utilized in those specialty situations, he wasn't throwing the football. He trained. He trained a ton this offseason, and that's why Pribula's a better passer. And plus, Missouri's making him pass right? He has to pass the football. So it's either one way or another you do it. But I do stand by, because these coaches make millions of dollars, which means you have to make $1 million decisions. You can't afford to just say, well, we assume he'll be better. On a day-to-day situation, every practice is a competition. Because then anybody could just be on the football field. The starting punter from a season ago was benched. A former captain was benched. Okay, that's the punter. It's not as important of a position. There's not as much consequences. You can get away with benching your starting punter. The starting safety, Antoine Belgrave Shorter, was benched for King Mack because he overtook him in practice. Trying to think of some other ones. Liam Clifford gets benched. Liam Clifford was playing more 1 to 2 years ago than he is now. Clifford got benched. So, Clifford's his guy, the Clifford family. Those are James Franklin's people. Okay, then why does he bench Liam Clifford if he's that loyal? So it's twofold. I do believe that James Franklin is loyal to a fault to certain aspects, right? The want-to-know mentality or the routine and everything else. Because if the routine isn't getting you where you're going, should you change the routine? He's loyal to it to a fault. But when it comes to player-to-player competitions, you see it every day in practice. We don't see the interceptions that Will Levis is throwing. We don't see the interceptions that Bo Pribula, in theory, is throwing at practice, or the mistakes that he's making and what Drew Allar does right and wrong versus what Pribula does right and wrong. We see the games, but we don't see the practice on a day-to-day basis, what guys are doing. Okay? If you're on the bench, there's a reason for that. So now I got to try to figure out how to get, because I say that and I can't justify why Katron Allen's getting 8 carries. What is he not doing in practice? Is he not doing something in practice? Wow. I don't think I wonder if there was a comment attached to this or not, but wow. Thank you so much for the super chat. Barney, thank you so much for the super chat. Again, include a comment, if a question or something that you want thrown up on the show. So we'll go back into, like I said, if you have a comment or a question you want put to the top, super chat. We'll go back into the live chat as it is, and I think I picked up. So Joey O'Brien, Raymond, I think I just recognize you from the Notre Dame support. So I assume, yes, you don't have to announce that you're a Notre Dame fan. Joey O'Brien's laughing at you all. Maybe because I know that some Penn State fans weren't exactly the most agreeable to a Joey O'Brien commitment to Notre Dame. So, yeah, O'Brien's, and so is Kari Adams. Yeah. Nope, you're right. Congrats. Not that Knowles isn't good, but Ohio State players much prefer Patricia for him being more of a player's coach. And James Franklin's more of a player's coach, right? And you can see, I mean, that's another part of I said it before on the previous live show. I want to say it again. Here's the thing that also James Franklin has going for him is that he has all the support of everybody. Past players, current players, future commits, and their families. So Saquon Barkley, Sean Clifford, I don't know about Tommy. It's not everybody. Oh, Will Levis, Tommy Stevens. No, that's not who I'm talking about. I'm talking about players that went to Penn State, stayed at Penn State, and moved on in some capacity, whether that's a player that made it to the NFL or just played college football and they were done. So everybody will go to bat for James Franklin. Micah Parsons will. Sean Clifford will. Devon J. Thomas will, from Devon Ali's Devon J. Thomas, and when he changed his name. Curtis Jacobs. I'm just trying to rattle off players that I think would. Jaquan Brisker. Jalen Reed. Really, seriously, name a player, and they'd probably go to bat for James Franklin. Theo Johnson, after they lost to Ohio State last year, I just remember how he was not on the brink of tears, but just really emotional, really distraught, and was just like, man, James Franklin has given everything to this program. So many players would do anything for that coach and would never change their decision and go and just go to bat for James Franklin. That's the kind of support that he has from previous players, current players, because Deni Dennis Sutton and other people back that up that, hey, we will go to fight for James Franklin no matter what. And then future recruits are all like, James Franklin, he's great. I saw a post from Terry Wiggins, 4-star linebacker committed to Penn State for the class of 2026. His dad said that James Franklin and the way that he operates is the reason why Terry will be at Penn State next season. So you have the support of the player apparatus. Who cares what the podcast host says? Who cares what the fan says when Penn State's coming down to a decision? But are you content with where the program is? Again, sometimes a change of scenery is not... people have made the comparison, Andy Reid and the Philadelphia Eagles, they fired him because he was only getting them to the NCAA championship, NFC championship. It's different in the NFL because the NFL has revenue, constant revenue that they bring in. Penn State isn't sitting on a surplus of money. I mean, they are, but they're not. Not the way that the NFL is operating as a franchise, right? The NFL teams are franchises. You have ownership. You have ownership groups. You have investment groups. Penn State does not have that. Penn State is a university with an endowment, right? They don't have the luxury of, being a business that grows, but they are still a sports business, but not like a franchise. Or I'm not totally a business expert, but I hope that makes sense. Okay. Is that it's not as simple as, okay, we can let a head coach go and we'll deal with the ramifications of it. No, you have to be seriously conscious of what you do to keep the budget balanced. Whereas it's a franchise. You don't have somebody investing, all investments to Penn State are donations. You don't have business investments, right? It's not lucrative. You can't get somebody to buy and operate a portion of Penn State football. Even though that's the joke, right? That's the joke that Penn State or that the Big Ten's trying to do that. The Big Ten is trying to negotiate a $2 billion surplus with a private equity firm to inject all of that money. And then do we really want to see college football go that way? Because then the Big Ten would reign supreme. And then the SEC would probably follow along, and then they would try to get a private equity firm to fund $1 billion, $2 billion, and then it's nobody else. And then the MAC conference and the ACC and anybody else that's not the Big Ten and the SEC. It's coming. It's just a matter of that's Pandora's box that NIL and the transfer portal opened up. We're talking about Ohio State here. I know the comments section. I'm a lot behind the comments section because I can only get to them one at a time. Ohio State. I don't give Penn State a chance against Ohio State. No, I don't give them one at all. Not getting Marcus Freeman either. No, Marcus Freeman was not mentioned as a coaching. Does anyone want to suggest coaching candidates at Penn State? Again, it's not a guarantee that Penn State even moves on from Franklin this offseason. It's not. Franklin could, if he goes 10-2, right? In a crazy world, he goes 10-2. Let's just say is Penn State really going to do that? Let's buy you out after you went 10-2. You circled the wagons and you made the playoff. You have these recruiting classes coming in. I don't think Penn State would. And then you would get a portion because it's about the fan base. If fans stop showing up to games, if fans stop paying for parking and stop buying merchandise, then you got to make a change. That's what Pat Kraft's up against there. If it gets to that point. Let's see where else we can go with that. So yeah, if James Franklin goes 9-3, they beat Ohio State. That's still another leverage argument. You missed the playoffs, but hey, we beat Ohio State for the first time. Again, that's a big if. I'm not saying that I believe that, but is it possible? Yeah, it's possible. See some other comments that Lanning would never. Yeah, Lanning's good in Oregon. He's definitely not going anywhere. Yeah, the NFL would be the only job. And why would you risk that? You have so much stability. You're well liked in Oregon. You have every resource you could ever ask for. Why would you leave? Why would you leave? And there's things to chase. There's things to chase because of the standard that Nick Saban set. The stand right, winning national titles, being this modern era coach. Right, everybody wants to be the next Nick Saban. So Dan Lanning, oh, well, if he wins a national title at Oregon, then he'll move on. Why? Why stop and not why stop there? Sacrifice all your stability, roll the dice in the NFL when what you do works in college. What Dan Lanning is doing is working in college. It works at Oregon. It's a perfect match. Why give that up? Why get rid of that? If you're Dan Lanning, try to be the next Nick Saban. Win a bunch of national titles, go down as one of the best, try to go down as the best college football coach in history. You can do that. There's plenty to chase. So don't think, oh, when he wins a national title, he'll move on and Oregon will be. Same thing with Ryan Day. Why would Ryan Day move on from Ohio State? Excuse me. Maybe I should take a drink of water. I haven't had water. If we're going to keep doing this, right? I have all of you after midnight on a Saturday going into Sunday. So thank you for that. Like I said, this was a more of an informal live show. Still to an extent, I think is pretty formal. It's formal, but it's informal, right? Franklin's contract is absurd. Penn State as a university is a clown show for ever agreeing to it in the first place. Yeah, Franklin wanted stability, and he got it. Franklin wanted stability, and he got it. And nobody questioned it. Nobody batted an eye because it went through an approval process. It's not like it was one person. It was Sandy Barber and James Franklin doing a behind-the-scenes deal. No, it was a board of trustees. It was many people. It wasn't just 2 or 3. It was the entire board of trustees. It was Sandy Barber that negotiated it with James Franklin's agent. He got a lot of securities, and now he's almost fireproof. He is fireproof. You have to negotiate him out of his buyout. Franklin's going to Franklin for at least 3 more years. Is that at Penn State or is that somewhere else? Are we talking about if he takes another job that he's going to do that? Keep going through the comments. Let's see. There has to be some kind of contract clause that actually requires James Franklin to do his job. Yes, I mean, James Franklin does his job because he's not just going to sit back and say the season's done. If he still wants to coach in college football, I would argue that he's coaching for his next job. If he wants, because does he want to go to the ACC? James Franklin's not ready. Maybe he's ready to retire. I don't know. Maybe he's ready to retire. But if you're trying to get back into the SEC, if you're trying to, so let me pull up conferences. What school could he go to? Because I saw Virginia Tech as a possibility, and I said, you know what? They want a proven head coach. Does Virginia Tech want to wait that long for Penn State and James Franklin to negotiate a buyout, though? So let's figure out what James Franklin's realistic options are in the Big Ten or in the SEC, because you don't want to go into the ACC or the Big 12. That is a major step back. Again, why would James Franklin want to leave Penn State? I don't know James Franklin's contract. What is James Franklin's annual salary right now? $8.5 million. Why would you want to do that? Why would you want to go to another school? Why would you want to go to another school and take a pay cut, take a pay cut, take a resource cut, take a stability cut, and when I talk about stability, that's everything. Stability of the program, stability within the conference, unless you're SEC or Big Ten. So let's see what jobs would James Franklin get? If I know that USC, there are people at USC that feel really strongly about James Franklin. Like there were some support, like I'm talking like big donors, mega donors at USC that really wanted James Franklin at USC. If Lincoln Riley, hey, the USC might be feeling the same type of way as most Penn State fans are about James Franklin, that it's just time to move on. It's not working out. James Franklin at USC, that's a possibility. He would never go to Iowa. He would never go to Minnesota. That's if Kirk Ferentz retires. He would never go to Minnesota, right? He would never fit at Minnesota. Would he go to UCLA? Would he go to UCLA? Probably not, because that department is grossly mismanaged. No stability. You take a hit in resources. Oh, great. You get to lead out in California. You're out in Los Angeles, but you get a cost everywhere else. And then Rutgers, Purdue, Wisconsin. I'm looking at the teams at the bottom of the Big Ten right now. Oh, and Penn State's there. Yeah. The SEC. Florida. Florida's the first school that comes to mind. I think Florida and James Franklin would be a perfect fit. I really do. If James Franklin, if Penn State is able to get their ideal candidate, somebody that just kind of fits in with Penn State. I don't know what direction, what they're exactly looking for in a coaching candidate if they part ways with James Franklin eventually. Again, because I don't know. I'm here to say that losing to UCLA is a fireable offense. I'm not going to be the person that calls for anybody's job, because I wouldn't like it if somebody called for my job, if said, I want Zach Seyko fired as a podcast host. Well, since I don't like that, I'm not going to project that on anybody else. That's just my 2 cents, okay? You disagree with it, I can understand that. But I will admit to the facts that losing to UCLA like this is a fireable offense, okay? So if that's a fireable offense, then how does the conversation go? But I don't know if Penn State is going to do it, because it's just not as simple as, yeah, let's fire the guy. But it does seem like there's a middle ground and an opportunity for both parties to move on. So for James Franklin, Florida makes a ton of sense. I don't know why Billy Napier's still at Florida. Is his buyout ludicrous? What does he have at the University of Florida? It's different when, okay, it's easy to point and say, hey, Billy Napier has committed tons of fireable offenses, but he's going 7-5 and 6-6 with top 5 recruiting classes. James Franklin is still more or less succeeding. They're not winning championships, but they're still relevant. They're going 10-2. You're making the playoff, and you're doing it with top 15 recruiting classes, okay? Billy Napier and what Florida have done, that's, if Penn State was going 7-5, then yeah, but now we've crossed into that threshold. You lost to UCLA. That was the line that was never crossed. Oh, you'll lose to Ohio State, Michigan, Notre Dame, but you won't lose to UCLA, right? Well, you lost to UCLA. So that's where we are. If there's one coach I'd get, it'd be Brian Hartline. Brian Hartline. I don't think he'd leave Ohio State. I don't think he would. I know. Let me take that back, because I think he was interviewing for West Virginia. Andy Kotelnicki didn't do himself any favors. He should have, hindsight's 2020, but he should have taken the West Virginia job. Ouch. Drew Allar should have went off to the NFL. Ouch. Again, hindsight's 2020. Hindsight's 2020. I won't put the water bottle there. But Andy Kotelnicki is he's not a head coaching candidate in waiting now. Yeah, he's going to have to prove himself again. I get it. Hindsight's 2020. Oh man. Must be nice to get $50 million contracts that give you complete control with zero accountability or consequences with your failure. And that's where the pressure of the fan base is supposed to come in, right? If you don't like your coach and you want to change, that's the power that the fan base holds. So that's James Franklin's stability within Penn State, but what's his stability with the fans? It's simply put, I can't categorize the fans, right? The fans are the fans. Or the donors, okay? If the donors have had enough, if the fans have had enough, that's how you make your statement if you don't like a coach. This is like Alabama and Florida State. Penn State will still be top 25. Probably. I mean, if they finish 9-3, that's best case. I think best case scenarios they finish 9-3 and they lose to Ohio State. Could they? I honestly, I don't know. I don't know if they beat Indiana. I can't. I think Iowa comes into question. I mean, Penn State's offense it's not like they just took a step back. Mind everybody. Okay? Let me see if I have the updated statistics, because I look at yards per play achieved and yards per play allowed. And Penn State was they were 16th last year in yards. I understand, okay, if they're top 20, if they move from 16th to, say, 28th. They're at 53rd. They went from 16th to 53rd compared to a season ago in yards per play gained. And then on defense, it's probably not good after the defensive performance today. Man, oh, wow, I didn't know Oklahoma's defense was really good. Wow, Brent Venables has it figured out. And Oklahoma could have fired Brent Venables. He had every reason to be fired. Penn State went from, Tom Allen had this group top 15 as well in yards per play allowed. Penn State's at 29th. So that's the slight regression there. They went from top 15 to top 30. Penn State's offense is abysmal. Whoa, Missouri's defense is really good. 3.9 yards per play allowed. That's 6th in the nation. So Bo Perbula has a defense to really help him out there as well. Good for him. Happy for him. Coaching, because I'm going to wrap up here at 90 minutes. We're almost at 1 a.m. Eastern time, right? If you're watching anywhere else, again, thank you for the support. Thank you for 250 viewers on the live show here. I'm kind of just rambling, like I said, informal. I'm tired. This has been somewhat of an emotionally exhausting day. I was not prepared to react to Penn State losing to UCLA. Of all games. Again, if this was Iowa, it's a little different, right? That's a feisty Iowa team. That's not the worst team in in FBS football. Yeah, that's an excuse. We had to drive to Harrisburg because our runway isn't big enough for the plane that can fly to LA. That's part of the travel. That's the travel, right? Let me give my head coaching candidates here to wrap up the live show. So Jim Knowles is not a head. Let me start by who is not on my head coaching big board. Jim Knowles is not, and that has nothing to do with the UCLA game. I would say Jim Knowles is not. He's not a head coaching candidate in my mind. Andy Kotelnicki has unfortunately coached his way. I thought he would have been I thought he would have been a good head coaching candidate down the road. He's not on my big board anymore as an outside option. Who else would not be? Manny Diaz. I saw Manny Diaz suggested. I'm not actually that thrilled with Manny Diaz being a head coach. He doesn't recruit that well. The ACC is actually a really good spot. Duke and the ACC are actually a really good spot for him. I would like to see Manny Diaz stay there. Manny Diaz being suggested, that's not a good head coaching hire for Penn State. Remember, Penn State has to be you have to be able to match the program with the coach. So let me cut to the chase instead of saying who's not ideal. Who is ideal? Will Stein. Will Stein is at the top of my big board. Is this because I'm tired of seeing Penn State struggle with quarterback play? Yes. That's where that's driven. That's what that's mostly driven by. Will Stein is some form of quarterback whisperer. He's some form of quarterback whisperer for college. He was able to turn around Dante Moore's career. Dylan Gabriel looked phenomenal, and he was able to become a 3rd-round pick. Granted, the Cleveland Browns, did they retry? He's starting for the Cleveland Browns, right? So Will Stein is a quarterback whisperer. He's proven that. I'm okay with taking. While he's never been a head coach, I'm okay with taking the gamble on a Will Stein as an offensive coordinator, as a proven offensive coordinator at Penn State. I think that is a worthwhile hire. He's at the top. Kenny Dillingham, obviously at Arizona State. That's a Power 4 program. He's led them to the college football playoff. He's young and upcoming. He's from Arizona State, so would he leave his alma mater? Probably for the right job. John Summerall at Tulane is going to be another one. You want to find coaches that are rising stars. They're up and coming. They're a Power 4. They've had a lot of success at the Group of 5. They just need the resources, right? That was the idea of James Franklin, is that he is a rising star when he was in his 40s. And look, he led Vanderbilt to 9-3. Sometimes it just doesn't work out at the end of the day, or you run your course. James Franklin's just kind of run his course at Penn State. So I said Will Stein, I said Kenny Dillingham, I said John Summerall. I want to keep, and I want to get his name correct. I don't want to mess up his name. Over at North Texas, I just want people to keep an eye on this coach for the foreseeable future. I don't think North Texas is a good enough of a resume builder at this point. I would want to see him move on to a Power 4, an ACC, or maybe that's the gamble you take. I think Eric Morris is an offensive guru of all sorts. Okay, I mentioned Will Stein, obviously, with respect, but I am a huge fan of Eric Morris at some point in time, just in college football. I think he continues to succeed everywhere he goes, and turns places into just offensive powerhouses. So wherever he's been as an OC, as a head coach, Incarnate Word, he turned that Cam Ward was there. First overall pick, Cam Ward. Okay? So that's he worked with Patrick Mahomes, he worked with Cam Ward, and now North Texas is just scoring points. Like, they just put up points at will. But I'm not advocating for Penn State to hire him right now. I would need to see him prove it. Curt Cignetti. I didn't mean to wait to say Curt Cignetti, but Curt Cignetti is an ideal choice if Penn State were to move on. So those are the top three for me. Would be Wilson, and necessarily in no particular order, right? Curt Cignetti from Indiana, and I don't know. I mean, he's got an ideal setup at Indiana. What can Penn State offer more than what Indiana's offering? Because they upped their NIL, their donors are fully bought into supporting him. Indiana football is a big deal now. They backed him. Tom Allen crawled over broken glass so that Curt Cignetti could run. And maybe that's the same thing here. James Franklin pushed the boulder uphill so that someone else can take the baton and move forward. What difference does a Lane Kiffin make, right? Lane Kiffin, I know that Lane Kiffin kind of wants out at Ole Miss. I always kind of passively hear that from other Locked On hosts or just people that are in college football that, Lane Kiffin would love to coach at a Florida, or Lane Kiffin would love to go back to a USC or something like that. Like, he's just not overly thrilled at Ole Miss. I mean, so be it. No to Brian Kelly. Absolutely not. I don't think Josh Heupel would leave Tennessee. No to Shane Beamer. I wouldn't want Shane Beamer. Oh, nobody's pointed this out. How about Texas, Clemson, and Penn State are all dealing with the same. Those were three of the favorite title contenders for this season. Some of them those are three of the top six in no particular order, but Penn State was trendy. Texas was trendy. And Clemson was trendy. None of them are making the national title. So I wonder, I need to go peek into Texas, and are they saying fire Steve Sarkisian? Because everybody will say, they will swear that Steve Sarkisian is much better than James Franklin. Well, he just lost to Billy Napier, Florida. Ohio State, that's understandable. At Columbus, that's understandable. But losing to Florida 29-21, no, not really. But then again, I shouldn't throw stones. I shouldn't throw stones in my glass house over here because Penn State lost to UCLA. So I guess I shouldn't be critical. Same thing with Clemson. Oh, Clemson lost to Syracuse. Yeah, I shouldn't say anything. Penn State lost to UCLA. So I see I have another super chat. Appreciate that, Barney. Thank you so much for the super chat and your comment. You are tired. You're tired. Come on now. It's a long drive back. You need to have some entertainment until I get this equipment back to the locker room. Thanks for what you do, Zach. Appreciate it. Really appreciate it. And that's what I'm trying to be, a form of conversation. This is a place to vent. This is a place to just discuss ideas. Nobody else is doing this right now. Are we just kind of having I call this a fireside chat, where we're just throwing out ideas. What went wrong here? What could Penn State do? The facts of the situation. Okay, what is it? People are asking about his buyout. People are asking about, would Penn State fire him right now? And no, they're not going to fire him right now. It's going to be at the end of the season because James Franklin has all the leverage. Penn State doesn't. Penn State doesn't have any negotiating leverage. The ideal, this is where I will finish up. It's almost 1 a.m. I'm at 90 minutes. I said I'd bring us to 90 minutes. So here we are. And I just want to say thank you, show appreciation. I don't do this without all of you. So that's the fact of the matter. I appreciate each and every one of you because you help make the show what it is. So thank you for that, because you give me the opportunity to do this, and I want to do an excellent job at it, and I hope I do. So the blueprint that I'm trying to theorize here is that Penn State, James Franklin needs to coach for his future. So he's not just going to kick his feet up and say, I'm packing it. I started to talk about that. He's not just going to pack it in because he is coaching for another job. ACC jobs won't want him. If this team totally collapses, well, if you had all that talent, why should we bring you in here at the ACC? Why should we invest in you when you just totally collapse? I guess Franklin's resume long-term is still good enough. You have the New Year's 6 wins. Hey, I just need somebody that's going to back me, right? James Franklin, I'm sure, will be able, and his agent will be able to negotiate some sort of situation. If, and again, this is a big if. I can't sit here and predict that, yes, Penn State is going to move on, because James Franklin still has reasons, not many, but has reasons to be the head coach of Penn State. And to say that, well, you really don't want to pay that buyout. I have a top 5 class for 2027 loading right now at the moment. That's a really good class. And I know that's a lot of hypotheticals, but they're committed to James Franklin. And it's not an excuse. I genuinely mean that. This is what James Franklin is going to say in these conversations. Do you really want to mess up the class of 2026? Do you really want to mess up the class of 2027, which could be iconic? The Adidas deal kicks in. Now I have the NIL to go get the recruits that I want. I think it's over. I think, again, losing to UCLA, this wasn't losing to Ohio State and Indiana. And that was characterized as a fireable offense by my mutuals. My mutuals said, yeah, if you go 9-3 and if Penn State goes 9-3 and misses the playoffs, that's a fireable offense, dude. Move on from James Franklin. Well, he lost to UCLA. So if Indiana's the fireable offense, what does that make UCLA? But James Franklin still has leverage to say that, hey, I belong at Penn State. You're stuck with me. So, and he might not be, again, why would he want to leave Penn State? This is a destination job. He's not getting Ohio State. He's not getting LSU. Again, could you get Florida? Potentially. I think Florida would be, if Billy Napier gets fired and he's able to work with Florida, I could easily see James Franklin taking the Florida job, and then that's that. And he negotiates a mediated buyout. Penn State's still going to have to pay a lump sum of money. But that's my most logical storybook ending to this, where both sides benefit. Franklin goes to Florida, gets his setup, gets the NIL, gets the support. He's in a warmer climate, all that stuff. I don't know. And then Penn State gets to start fresh. And Florida gets to start fresh, too. They move on from Billy Napier. James Franklin's a guy that's always kind of been loosely targeted on coaching boards, or at least that's been an ideal candidate. That's probably different now. But again, it's just, well, if I go here, if I have this kind of thing. I like this comment. I'm trying to scroll through the live chat to see if there's anything else interesting I want to finish on. Wrestling season can't come soon enough, and neither can hockey. At least we have wrestling and hockey over here. And we'll talk about it on Locked On Nittany Lions. If you didn't know that, well, I have 200 plus of you here. I talk about wrestling and hockey and basketball too. I know basketball is not a power sport, but hockey, we're going to talk about hockey here. We are going to talk about wrestling quite a bit. So if you like my football commentary, but you don't like where the football team is, then we'll talk about wrestling and we'll talk about hockey extensively. So just a shameless plug there. So that's the storybook ending, I think, where all sides win. Franklin gets his buyout. He goes to Florida, finds his stability, doesn't take a step back in terms of program or whatever, brand, right? Florida and Penn State are both top tier jobs, regardless of who you think's better. But if Franklin can't land an SEC job, if he can't land a coveted Big Ten job, why would he leave Penn State? Why would he want to leave Penn State? To go to Virginia Tech? He's going to leave Penn State to go to Virginia Tech willingly? No, he's going to need some conditions for that to happen. That's all I'm going to say. That's all I'm going to say about this. I see we have some more super chats here. We are playing like an Adidas school. See, Adidas is, and I want to see when that deal kicks in. Adidas is a phenomenal situation for Penn State. Penn State's going to have so much more leverage now in NIL. So that's where, let me say this about the Adidas deal. People might joke about it and say that, oh, Nike's better than Adidas and anything like that. No. Adidas being a force in the NIL space and wanting to support the player athletes in NIL deals gives Penn State so much more leverage. And so we want to talk about leverage here, talk about Penn State, because then you go get a different head coach. You don't have to, because it was different. If you fired Franklin in 2019 or 2018, let's just say, I know there weren't fireable situations there, but if you fire him in 2018 and 2019, then you lose those recruiting classes and you got to wait. Someone's got to come in 3, 4, 5 years. It's a 5-year timeline. No, you have the transfer portal. You have NIL. Look at how Texas Tech said, we are all in. They can win the Big 12. They can be a top seed in the college football playoff. If Penn State aces its hypothetical coaching hire, if they move on from James Franklin, because I can't predict that. I don't know. It's a 50-50 situation. It's 50-50. If Penn State totally crumbles, they go 7-5. Yeah, Franklin's out. They're going to negotiate. But again, I don't know, because then Franklin coaches his way out of a job. Okay, let me stop there. But fortunately for Penn State fans, if you make the coaching change, you don't have to wait 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years for a coach to settle in. You have the transfer portal. You have Pat Kraft, who's set up has helped boost NIL and Penn State's brand power and everything like that, that Penn State does not need. Penn State fans do not need to worry about potentially becoming Nebraska 3.0, or right, where you're perpetually 7-5 and 8-4 and nothing works out. You need to ace your head coach hire, and that's easier said than done. But at least you have the portal, and at least you have NIL to go attack a rebuild. Okay. Now I'm finished. Oh, another super chat. Thank you so much. Hire Al Bundy. Okay. Legitimate coaching candidate. I appreciate the super chat, but I'm glad that's what we wanted to use for our super chat there. So the Adidas deal kicks in next season, and maybe that's the perfect launching point for Penn State. My name is Zach Seyko. I'm the host of Locked On Nittany Lions. As always, thank you so much. I do this daily. Talk about Penn State daily, whether that's football, wrestling, whether that's recruiting. And we're going to have some interesting twists and turns, right? Whether Penn State does something or does nothing, we have a lot of interesting conversations coming up. You're going to get the full perspective around Penn State. This isn't a football-only podcast. We're going to talk about it for wrestling, for basketball, for hockey. Gavin McKenna, Penn State hockey. Yeah. So, but no, the Deuce Sports will get the attention as such. So thank you for making this show a part of your routine. Thank you so much for tuning in to me almost at 1 a.m. to hear me rant about Penn State football for over 90 minutes. That's truly a privilege. I don't take that for granted. I don't take any of you in the audience for granted. I appreciate your comments all across the board. I appreciate the super chats, and we'll keep doing this. We'll keep doing live shows because if I get the interaction, I am happy to do these live shows. I'm happy to sit here with all of you and just have a fireside chat and let's talk about this. Let's talk about ABC, XYZ. And you guys make this fun. So thank you. Look out for more content. We'll have more episodes, your regular scheduled programming Monday through Friday. And we're going to talk about it all. We're going to talk about every Penn State sports team, for better or for worse. Thank you so much for the support. Good night, everybody. Penn State loses to UCLA. I can't believe I'm saying that. 42-37. Thank you for making Locked On Nittany Lions a part of your daily routine. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is truly your team every single day.